sound is.
I never thought I'd say this, mate, but welcome to Season 2 of Ouzo Talk.
Who would have thought, Tom, Season 2?
Yeah, mate, I could never have imagined that we'd get to this point. Could you?
No, but you know what? It feels like we've just started. Does it feel like we're still fresh into this?
I'm pretty tired at this point, let's be honest. But no, look, I'm excited about the prospect of another season. I'm excited about the potential for all the guests that we're going to have. And mate, more importantly, I'm excited that you and I are back together again.
Exactly. Do what we love doing. Eh?
It's like a marriage.
You reckon?
Yeah, forced.
We're going to fight more, though, if it's going to be a marriage. I think we get on too well.
We do get on too well. Maybe it's the alcohol.
Yeah, it could be. Just eases the tension, maybe.
Just takes the edge off, just that little bit.
Yes, I think you're right there.
Yeah. Well, look, 28 episodes in Season 1. So many amazing guests from celebrities, actors and comedians, chefs, authors, martial artists. And I don't know, what else did we have? We had so many different people on, and would you believe we're going to top it all off again in Season 2?
It is, mate. We've got some big names coming up, and look, I can't wait to get stuck in. You know, we won't give anything away, but we've already booked in a few big names.
Yep. Absolutely. And yeah, we're back in a big bad way, as Nico says. But look, straight off the bat, we want you to join us. If you'd like to get in touch with us, ouzotalk@outlook.com is the email, at ouzotalk on most social media platforms, and at ouzo_talk on Instagram. We also have a YouTube channel, so make sure you're subscribing there because some special stuff happening there this season as well. Like, subscribe, follow, Ouzo Talk on everything. Make sure you're there. Isn't that right, Nick?
Classic. That's it. We are everywhere now.
We absolutely love reading your messages, so make sure you're emailing us. Make sure you're commenting on all the stuff that you see. We love it. And, mate, you might even get a shout-out, right? We've done a few in the last season or so, haven't we?
That's right. Actually, we've dropped off a bit, We should be doing more of that, I think.
Yeah.
Because you get a lot of good stuff and a lot of good tips on stories that we should be doing as well.
Very true. If you do have ideas, we want to hear them. Whatever it is, if you've got someone interesting, if there's an interesting topic that's sort of close to your heart, that's related to your Greekness, we want to hear about it. This is the place to talk about it. Ouzo Talk is right there for that. But look, let's get into it because true to form, we have another interesting individual in our midst that I want to introduce to you, Nick. You ready for Season 2?
Oh, yeah, mate. Let's go.
All right, let's do it. Okay,
so
our first guest for 2022 comes from the world of diplomacy and is actually the Consul General of Greece here in Sydney, Australia. He joined the diplomatic service in 2002 after having completed his military service as second lieutenant in the Greek contingent in Cyprus and has since served in various positions in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, both at headquarters in Athens and elsewhere. From 2003 to 2004, he held the position of Desk Officer for EU-CIS Relations in the C1 Directorate for EU External Relations, following which he was posted to the permanent mission of Greece to the UN in New York. At the UN, he dealt with East African issues during Greece's tenure as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council in 2005 to 2006. In 2007, he moved to Amman, Jordan, where he served for 3 years as Deputy Head of Mission at the Greek Embassy. Returning to a multilateral context, this time at the UN in Geneva, he served as head of the disarmament section at the Greek Permanent Mission from 2010 to 2015. In September 2015, he was appointed European Correspondent at the MFA, a position which he held until September 2018, when he moved to Nicosia, where he served as Deputy Head of Mission of the Embassy of Greece in Cyprus. But, as I said, since the 30th of September 2022, he's been here in Sydney performing the role of Consul General. Yiannis Mallikourtis, welcome to Ouzo Talk, my friend.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me.
Oh, welcome, Yanni, mate. I was going to say, reading all that, it sounds like you're like 70, 80 years old. You've done so much. You look so young and so good and healthy.
I was one of the youngest when I joined in my class, so, people envy me for that.
Yeah, good for you. No worries.
Was there a bit of fanfare about the fact that you were as young as you were when you first joined?
No, we were about 3 of us out of 20. 3 of us were 25 years old when we joined. So, if you do the math, I'm just 45 now.
Oh,
fantastic.
Wow. Okay.
It's very, very young for some. I mean, you think about politicians and think about people in the area of diplomacy, and generally your mind naturally sort of goes to someone much older, but you are a spring chicken.
I'm losing my hair, though.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all?
Nah, you still got it, mate. Actually, we've got one thing in common. I'm probably jumping in a bit early, actually. We wore a bow tie for the first time at the same event.
Yes, exactly.
Is that right?
St. George Ball.
That's right, yeah.
It was the first time in
That
my
was
life.
the first time you wore a bow tie?
Yeah, and I had to go and buy one a few days earlier. Because I never. Yeah, he did the same thing. Yeah, you see.
I was ringing around.
Stereotypes about diplomats being very posh, but not in this case.
Classic. I did the same thing. I rang up all my friends. Fuck, who's got a bow tie?
Yeah. By the way, you can swear on this podcast. You don't have to, but you know.
Sometimes you do.
We need to be on our best behaviour for this episode, Nick. We shouldn't be swearing. And look, we're not really drinking, but look, in the spirit of the way that this podcast works, let's pretend we're having a drink.
Mm-hmm. Let's get into it.
Good stuff. Yamas.
Yamas, boys.
It's all water this time around.
Exactly. Sparkling.
Absolutely.
With lime.
Yanni, tell us a little bit about your Greek heritage. Obviously, we talk a lot about the background of our local Greek compatriots, you know, from the diaspora, but we're all from varying places in Greece. Where are you actually from?
Okay, usually in Greece, when they ask you where you come from, you refer to your grandfather from your father's side.
Sure.
Because most of us are Athenians, half of the population is Athenian. So I grew up in Athens, like most people did. But my grandfather was from Kalamata, from a village outside Kalamata called Sperchogia.
Sure.
And he left the city when he was about 16 or 17 to go to Athens to study at the military academy, Avelpidon. He was an officer in the Greek army.
Oh, wow.
So he left everything behind, and my father grew up in Athens, was born and he grew up in Athens, and so was I. So I would say I'm a third generation Athenian.
Okay.
Yes. There you go. Have you still got relatives in Kalamata at all, or in that?
No,
region?
I don't have many links with the place. On the other hand, with my mother's place of origin, I'm much more, related and very close to it. She's from Kefalonia, which is an island on the
She's
west.
She's from my side.
Yeah. We visit every year. Since I was a child, I go there. So I used to spend 2 months in the summer.
Beautiful. What a place.
So, yeah, I feel much more Kefalonitis than Kalamatianos, to be honest. Although my name is from Kalamata.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Beautiful. Yeah, I've got cousins from there as well.
Oh, do you?
Yep.
Oh, there you go.
My mum's side. My mum's sister's husband's side.
Okay. So obviously you grew up in Athens. What sort of area did you live in, or did you sort of move around?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Athens. I lived basically in 2 suburbs, Cholargo and Paleofaliro, which are not exactly the same. They're about 40 minutes away from each other. One is closer to the mountain, let's say, to Pedeli, not really, but closer. And the other one is on the coast. And being a third generation Athenian makes me a staunch Panathinaikos fan. I want to clarify this from the beginning, and I know I might disappoint some of your
half
audience.
Of the listenership has just disappeared.
Yeah. So if you want to delete that later, you can.
I see. Well, they're good at basketball, aren't they, Panathinaikos?
They used to be very good at football when I was growing up as well. So, yes, but in the past few years, they haven't won anything. So I'm making an effort to keep my son,
on the straight and narrow.
Yeah.
Classic.
What was that like, actually, growing up in such an... I'm guessing that the whole environment would have been green and white, basically, growing up. What was it like having that rivalry between Panathinaikos and Olympiakos during that period?
Yeah, it is a bit of a family thing because all my relatives are Panathinaiki, so we didn't have any Olympiakos in the family. I have a cousin who, I don't know what happened to him, and I haven't spoken for him in ages, but no, I'm joking. Everyone else was Panathinaikos, so yeah, and there was rivalry in school, but it was always, in collegial, we weren't, things got worse later, I think, when...
Really?
Yeah, more fanatic. At the time, we were joking and teasing each other, and usually I was on the teasing side, because at the time, Panathinaikos used to win.
Winning everything.
Yes.
Yeah, so... They stopped winning when I left. You know, when I joined the foreign ministry and I was abroad, so I didn't get so much hassle.
Okay, there you go. So I was going to say, you're into your sport, obviously. What sport did you play growing up as a kid?
I played football and tennis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you play any representative football, or was it just the
No, I
local
played
teams?
for my school team. I played as a left back.
Left back?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So you're a
tennis
left
as well. Yeah, I'm a left footer. And tennis
Okay.
for my school team as well.
Yeah, good. So I'm going to say you look quite fit, quite healthy. Looks like you're still keeping...
Touch wood.
Not like me and Tom. So me and Tom, we had body of Greek gods once.
Once upon a time.
Now we've got the body of Greeks. The gods have left us.
Well, let's just say most people will be listening to this in January, but at the time of recording, Argentina just won the World Cup overnight.
Exactly.
You stayed up to watch the game.
Yes,
What did you think of it?
I was asleep, but I set the alarm clock and I woke up my 9-year-old son to watch it together. I thought he wouldn't manage, but he did, because it was a very exciting match.
Wasn't it?
We supported Argentina, both of us. Not because we're Argentina fans, but because we wanted Messi to win it, basically.
sure.
Messi's swan song.
Yeah, as, a prize for all he's done for the sport.
Well, Andy Pascalides was sitting in that chair just a few weeks ago, and he called it. He said it's going to be Argentina.
He picked it.
Yeah, he picked
definitely.
it very early, and I think that was actually the day the World Cup started. We had that discussion.
Well, look, well deserved. He's one of the best players. He's won everything in Borough World Cup. So
yeah, it was a bit of a holy grail for him.
Yeah,
so it's good that he's achieved that.
Yeah,
to be the greatest of all times.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, GOAT they call it. Don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I read recently now his coach, Argentinian coach, said, "Look, there's a spot for you in 2026 for Messi." So it might not be over for him yet.
He's 35 or 36, something like
35,
that.
35. So maybe 39. Ronaldo was 39, wasn't he? Same age. So, yeah, good stuff.
What did you think of the robe? Just out of interest.
I don't know. That's their local culture, custom thing. I don't know. I don't have.
I went to bed. I didn't see that part.
Yeah.
So the Emir of Qatar basically put one of those black
and
robes
gold
over the
robe.
top of him. So when he raised the trophy...
No, I went
he's
to bed.
wearing
I
this
didn't
thing.
see that. So I'm going to check it out tonight.
Yeah.
Then
I think he just caused a diplomatic issue there with Qatar.
Well, it's their custom, their official thing. I don't know.
Everyone was blowing up on social media. Like it was everywhere.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you just let him, raise the trophy wearing the Argentinian jersey? But anyway, I thought it was strange as well. But anyway.
It looked strange because I didn't know the story behind it. I thought, what's he wearing? Would have taken it off, but then
it needed to be
some meaning
explained.
behind it. Yeah. So, good stuff. So, look, what do you think of Australia? And have you been here before? Is this the first time you've been here?
No, it's not exactly the place you pop over for the weekend when you grew up in Greece. So
or in Europe.
In Europe. No, I had never visited before, so it's my first time.
Yeah, okay. And you just been to Sydney? Have you been anywhere else yet?
I've been to Sydney and I've been to Newcastle for work one day, and I went to Canberra as well to meet my boss, basically the ambassador of Greece in Canberra.
Yeah, okay.
What are your first impressions of Australia so far?
It's laid back, which is very pleasant, not very formal. Despite my profession, I don't like too many formalities. There is a stereotype that diplomats adore wearing ties and drinking champagne and all that. But it's not quite how it used to be. The new generation of diplomats is more, I think, informal. So I like that. People are laid back. The nature is great. The multicultural dimension as well. It was something that I hadn't realized before. I thought it was more Anglo-Saxon as a country.
Okay.
So when we arrived the first days, we were impressed by the food. Basically, you can eat whatever you want here. So yeah, that was a pleasant surprise.
I tell you, that's one of I think we've discussed this before, but that's one of the main things that I miss when I go to Greece now. It's the food, oddly enough.
Yeah.
The food, don't get me wrong, the food there is unbelievable, but it's the
range
choice.
Of food.
Because the quality of the food here,
yeah, it's very good.
It's so good. Anyway, that's not to diss Greek food by any means. We love it.
Yeah, no, you're right, because we've got quality. Well, Australian cuisine now is like French, Japanese mixture with seafood and fresh produce. That's what it is. That's what the modern Australian cuisine is now.
We've kind of got the best of everything, don't we?
We do, yeah.
And many oysters.
Yes. I love oysters. Good stuff.
You mentioned there the ambassador. What is the structure between your role and the Greek ambassador's role here in Canberra?
Okay, so the head, let's say, of the Greek diplomatic representation in Australia is the ambassador in Canberra. That is the case in all the capitals. A Greek ambassador in a capital is the head, which means that he represents Greece. Mm-hmm. And then in countries where you've got a large diaspora, such as Australia, Germany, or the US, you've got many consulates general, mm-hmm. or smaller consulates. In Australia, we've got 3, mm-hmm. and one here. Melbourne is the largest.
Of course.
Adelaide and Perth, we've got a consulate.
Yeah, right.
Oh, wow.
So 4.
Okay, and you all hold the same level?
In terms of rank, or...
Yeah.
The 3, so Melbourne, Sydney, and Adelaide are consulate generals, so mm-hmm. we're more senior than the consulate in Perth, which is usually a younger diplomat.
Okay.
A bit younger, not much younger.
Yeah, right. What's the actual role of a consulate general here?
Yeah.
What's your main mission when when they install a consulate general in a city?
So if you were to analyze a job description of an ambassador, he would more look into the bilateral relations. Greece, Australia.
Right.
So very political foreign relations, that would be him in Canberra. Mm-hmm. Here it has to do more with the Greek community. Mm. So that takes up most of your time, without meaning that you shouldn't also work for, the enhancement of bilateral relations.
Sure.
But top of your list is the Greek diaspora, the Greek community of New South Wales in my case.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Not of Melbourne. Yeah, there's an issue of jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. I cannot get involved with the issues that fall under the purview of my colleague in Melbourne.
Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. So it's really about engagement with the local community here, and I'm guessing it's also about providing a service as well for the local community.
A service. So if we're going to describe a diplomat's job, I think a good quote is from a British diplomat, Nicholson, in the beginning of the previous century. He said that diplomats do the 3 R's. 3 R's are, the first R is to report. Mm-hmm. So to report back home what you're observing in the country where you're accredited. So that would mean political developments in the country.
I was going to say, give us some examples of what you consider observing.
Observing would be from a cultural event which you want to report back to Athens, which mm-hmm. is noteworthy. A lecture on Greek culture.
Right.
Or an initiative on the Parthenon marbles, where you've got here committees, or something on the Battle of Crete. That's reporting.
Wow.
I would be reporting back to Athens. So that's the first R. Mm-hmm. The second R is to represent. Represent who? Represent Greece. Mm-hmm. So you go to many functions to represent Greece. You don't represent yourself. Yeah, you represent the country.
Mm-hmm. So representing Greece as in tourism, what Greece is renowned for.
It could be represent Greece in a very formal function with the Australian authorities. Like mm-hmm. when I arrived here, for example, one of the first things I did was to meet the governor mm-hmm. of New South Wales. Mm-hmm. That is the representation of Greece. But it could also be a wine tasting event to promote Greek wine. So that would go into trade. But all that is representation. And then the third, which is, I think, sometimes the most difficult and most important at the same time, is recommend. Recommend back home if you want to improve something, or you've noted that emphasis should be given on a certain issue, you recommend to your headquarters to take some action on something. Mm. An example here would be, what do you recommend to Athens on revitalizing the Greek language amongst the Greek Australian community?
Yeah, right.
I'm not there yet, so after 3 months here, not even 3 months to start making recommendations on that, but I'm in the phase of observing to make a recommendation later on.
That's a very important one, obviously, because we've been hearing for the last few years that at certain universities, the Greek language has been under threat of being removed entirely from curriculums. Even as recently as a few months ago in Melbourne, I heard that something like that was happening. I could be wrong about that. But is this something that you primarily are advocating for, or will be looking to advocate for, and say, hypothetically, put incentives in place, or go back to the government in Greece and say, guys, this is at risk of being lost. We need to invest money or time or whatever needs to be. What's your role in trying to stop that from happening?
Yeah, I think it is probably the most interesting and at the same time most pertinent issue for a Greek consul here, I think. And we could dedicate, even another session here.
For
we
sure.
could talk for hours on this issue. I wouldn't go as far as saying that it is in danger, but it is, in a sense, being challenged. Yeah, if you compare the first generations of Greek Australians who arrived here, Greek and enrollments in schools they're gradually reducing. The numbers are falling. You could argue, so what? Because I've heard this argument. Some people have told me here that our identity is not defined by language. I can feel Greek Australian, listen to Greek music, visit Greece once a year, follow Greek football, and be equally Greek as someone who speaks the language. I'm not so sure. I understand the argument, but I feel that language is an overarching reality or principle that you can use as an instrument.
Yep.
To make sure that the culture is retained.
Yes.
In the future. So if we lose the language, I think it will be very difficult in the long run to keep the culture. Yeah.
I agree.
And I don't mean to be proficient in Greek. I like the quote by Professor Alfred Vincent, because I went to a function where he was present, and he said, if you don't use it, you lose it. He meant that at least use it. Sometimes we're embarrassed to use it when we are not proficient. I've noticed that.
I hear it in my own family.
Yeah.
My kids don't want to talk it because they feel embarrassed they're not saying it right. So it's a good point. So you're saying language is the pinnacle of our culture. Regardless if you go to Greece often or you wave the Greek flag, language is the pinnacle. We've got to get the language right to continue in the diaspora, I guess.
Yes, I think so. This year, a book came out called Pharos. It was written by Mr. Lobianco, who's of Italian origin. He's a professor, I think he's a linguist in Victoria, in Melbourne. He focuses on the teaching of Greek language in Victoria, but you can draw conclusions that pertain to the rest of the country, to the whole of Australia. His conclusion is what he uses an acronym, which Australians like using acronyms, COD, C-O-D. He says capacity, opportunity, desire. Capacity would be teaching Greek in schools, yeah, even at kindergarten. How do you increase capacity? So all those involved should do more, and that's also where the Greek state comes in.
Yep.
All the different actors in the community, but also the Australian government. What does the Australian government do to increase the teaching of foreign languages? Some people argue, I don't adopt this position because I've been here for 3 months, but some people argue that in Australia, multilingualism doesn't go hand in hand with multiculturalism. So you've got multiculturalism, that's fine, but in terms of multilingualism, there is still more to do. It's a very thin line for me but I'm just saying that some people believe that this is the case. So in other words, what do you do in terms of increasing capacities?
Do you think that's something to do with our culture in Australia, where there's so much co-curricular we have? Like a lot of the kids are playing sport, they're doing individual sports where there's no time to learn a second language, because a lot of the households now, again, even me as an example, we talk English in the house. Is this something perhaps we should be doing at mainstream schools possibly? Because Greek schools are definitely diminishing from when I was growing up.
Well, just on that point, I have a view on this. when I went to school, so I went to a Catholic school where they were not teaching Greek, obviously, as a second language. I had to do Greek school, either, there were two options, twice during the week after school, or once on a Saturday morning for 3 hours. Now, when you're telling a child that you've got to do that, it becomes a chore.
Yeah.
There's no way that child is going to buy in, which is one of the reasons why I think
That's
you
what
just
I'm trying
said,
to get at. Yeah.
folding it into the curriculum is such an important thing. But in a multicultural society like this, I guess the question is, where will the local schools start if they don't have a Greek connection?
Yeah. But on that, I actually learnt French in year 7. And I still remember a lot of the French phrases in year 7.
By that point, it's probably too late, though, I would say.
But that was through mainstream school. I didn't have to, but it was part of going to school.
I think we did Japanese.
When I went to Greek school after school, I was so brain dead from normal school.
Yeah.
I was exhausted. I wasn't really paying attention. And then Saturdays was sport. You wanted to play sport. So I guess that's the challenge.
Yeah, one of the privileges that you've got is that you speak a language which is the most popular language in the world. And English is a steamroller. You don't need it. You don't need to learn any other languages ostensibly. Yeah, you don't need it. Whereas we Greeks, when we grow up, the first thing our parents tell us is you have to learn languages because otherwise you won't do anything in your lives, And at the age of 10 or 12, most of us are doing lessons and learning English and French. And this is part of our culture. Whereas here in Australia, it's a country an Anglo-Saxon country in its culture mainly. So you don't need the foreign language as much as we do. So that's a handicap for those who want to propagate in favor of learning foreign languages. And I fully understand that. So that is, the first point is capacity. What do you do to increase the teaching? Yeah. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with the issue of scaling with a HSC? Mm-hmm. Which is also sometimes a disincentive for children to learn Greek. Mm. The second is opportunity, which I found very interesting because opportunity here, Lo Bianco means opportunity as in having the opportunity to speak the language. And he goes beyond the classroom. Mm-hmm. Because as you mentioned earlier, just now actually, that, at school it's a bit imposed. Some children view it as a chore. Whereas when they meet outside and they play football and speak Greek, or they play an instrument, or they're in an orchestra and they converse in Greek. Sometimes that perhaps is more efficient.
Yeah, true.
In learning the language. So what are the opportunities for the younger generations here to meet, to relate with each other, and speak a bit of Greek? How does the youth get involved? Because in many of the functions I go, I realize, let's not hide behind our fingers, that the younger generation are not really involved, in the associations. There are some exceptions, but you see usually people of an age which is higher than mine. So what do you do to instill some interest, some motivation for them to start participating in a Greek-speaking environment, somewhere where they can speak the language?
So we do have clubs at universities, don't we? Like SUGs and so forth.
Yep.
But I know what you mean, like, for example, a HEPA and all that sort of stuff. There's not much young Greek kids coming through. I guess that's something you need to focus on, I guess. How do we get them involved?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's one of my, objectives. I don't want to sound, too... too optimistic there, because it's not easy. But I would like to, try to get more involved with the youth in the beginning of next year. I have a few ideas about how I could do that. And the third is desire. Desire is perhaps the most difficult. How do you convince a young Greek Australian that it's worth learning Greek? You cannot use arguments which are outdated. So, our grandfathers used to tell us, learn Greek, otherwise you're not Greek, or, you have to wrap yourself around the Greek flag, and that won't work. That won't work. Definitely. How do you make it more interesting for them? Because, we Greeks were businessmen, so, we want to make sure that we profit from something when we started. Yeah?
That's right.
So what do we gain from it? If we're going to learn Greek, what is it? To me, someone told me, what am I going to gain? And that's a very difficult question to answer.
But see, I would argue that particularly with the Greek language, maybe this is me being biased, and us being biased among Greeks, but there's so much Greek in the English language. It's particularly noticeable when you study things like, obviously, like science and mathematics and all these things. We, as Greeks, inherently understand things that others need to learn from scratch.
Exactly.
As part of our language. And this is something that
that's a good point.
That I realized very early on. It's like, well, while everyone in this classroom needs to wrap their head around a particular scientific term, I know the meaning because I can speak Greek. That in itself should be enough incentive, surely.
Yeah, but in Yiannis' terms, how would you use it? How would it benefit you?
But this is the thing.
In business?
If you go to high school now, most high schools will say, why would they, for example, push French and Japanese, for example, like they did at my high school? Where's the advantage in that versus learning something that's actually going to benefit you by learning Greek? Well, what's the percentage of Greek in the English language? It's something ridiculous. It's over 60% or something.
I don't know.
It's high up there. Yeah.
It's a very high
depends,
proportion.
I guess, also on the on the subject matter. So if it's medicine or science, it's
sure.
Yeah.
But this is a language that has real and tangible benefits in the understanding of the language that they're initially learning. Surely there's that's something that we can do.
So Japanese, we get a lot of Aussie kids that go to Japan and they teach English, so they learn the language, so it does benefit them. We're starting to learn Mandarin now at school because we think that's going to help them economically, because the world is becoming such a smaller place.
And that's a geography thing as well, obviously, with us placed in this.
But maybe
area.
if Greece has some new industry, but then again, most people in Greece speak English anyway.
Yes.
So you don't really need to learn Greek to get by in Greece.
I think one of the arguments you guys mentioned before is about foreign languages being an instrument to improve a child's cognitive abilities, and his perception. And apparently, it's proven. I'm not a doctor. And I won't say that Greek makes you smarter, because that is probably not proven scientifically, although I'm sure it's right.
You can say it on this show.
Yeah.
Learning foreign languages improves the ability of a child to learn.
Definitely.
Especially at a young age. So that is definitely an argument, to use Greek. Another argument would be that you can use it in your profession, in your professional field. If you become a doctor, especially, or even even economics or mathematics or whatever, and you have the opportunity to, if you feel like it later, to go back to Greece and get immediately integrated into Greek society. Because when you speak the language, it's yes, Greeks speak English, but it's different when you speak the language. You feel you have a better perception of Greek society when you speak the language.
Definitely. Well, I like your view of cognitive improvement, speaking another language. That would work. That makes a lot of sense. You're going to have to learn another language. Why not be Greek? So I'm sure the Italians would have the same issue. A lot of their...
I think they have bigger problems than we do in terms of maintaining their language. Yeah, I think we're not the worst in that sense. We're still, fighting for it, I think, as a community.
As a side note, so you've worked in the US, you said.
Yeah.
Do you have the same issues in the US? Do you think they're more Greek than us in Australia? How do you see that?
I'll be very honest, I was working in the UN, so I didn't have many contacts with the Greek community. From the little interaction I had, I would say language is probably stronger here than there.
Wow. Right.
Yeah, I think that Greek has been maintained to some extent here, whereas in the US it's used less. At least that's my observation. I'm not sure.
No, that's okay.
If it's scientifically proven, but not scientifically, statistically proven. But I have the impression that Greek, that in the United States they speak less than we do here. Yeah,
because I've done a bit of traveling as well, and I do feel that perception. But Greeks in Canada, I find, are very, very similar to us.
Yeah,
they hang on to their culture a lot longer, and they can speak more Greek than what Americans can. But then again, the people we've been speaking to and been messaging us through the podcast, you think the opposite.
Yeah, actually, all the people that we've dealt with, whether they're in the US or Canada, their Greek is at a very high level. Maybe it's just our line of work.
Yeah,
who knows?
It could be. But I would have thought that too, like you said. They're more liberal. They blend into the American culture more. And like you said, it's an economical thing. It's more beneficial for them to learn English and the American way to benefit economically. But very interesting.
Obviously, it's too soon to be able to make recommendations, as you said, but is there a message that you want to get across about this? Is it about telling young families and parents, make sure you're speaking Greek to your kids as a start? Should you be looking for Greek schools? What can we do as Greeks of the diaspora to start?
Yeah, definitely that is one message. If you don't use it, you lose it, as Vincent said. And that means that parents should, make an effort to speak the language at home. They shouldn't solely depend on school, on 2 or 3 hours of Greek a week, in the best case scenario. Another way forward would be for the community here, the Greek community, to continue supporting programs of exchanges, sending scholarships, sending Greek Australians to Greece for 2 months or so.
I didn't even know there was such a thing. So there is a thing.
There are in the General Secretariat of Greeks Abroad, which belongs to the Foreign Ministry, has started these programs.
And what age group are the kids?
I think they're closer to finishing school. I think,
like 17, 18.
Yeah, I think so. And they started last year with Greek Australians from Melbourne, but it is something which is ongoing. And it's positive. I think that it is very important for Greek Australians to have a first-hand experience of living in Greece, maybe for a couple of months. And that is very important. Many Greek Australians have told me that, before going to Greece, I had very little contact with Greece. And I'm a reborn Greek when I came back. Born again Greek when I returned from Greece.
Yeah, great point. Because exactly. I was the same too. Yeah, I think we've mentioned it many shows. I was a bit embarrassed to be Greek living in Australia, but when I went there and it's in the music and the culture, I thought, mate, what am I hiding from? This is a great culture. But just what you said on then, I've got a couple of Israeli friends, and they send their kids back.
That's what I was going to say.
Oh, really? Yeah,
yes.
They send their kids to a kibbutz, so they live and breathe the Israeli culture for, I think it's like a year, and no contact with the parents. And the kibbutz where they send them to teach them traditional farming and all the religious ceremonies they do. Is it something that we could possibly introduce? Or
I think the program that the Jewish community has is called Birthright. They send them over there for a particular period of time to reconnect. But I think that's the name of the initiative. Yeah,
we would probably have a demonstration of Greek mothers here if we were going to send our children for a year to Greece. So if we focus on 2 months, it's good enough. And joking aside, I mean, even a few weeks a year.
Absolutely.
2 months is great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Is something that I think could do the trick, could be a trigger to change the mindset.
And I can't see too many people saying no to that.
Yeah.
Going to Greece for a few weeks and saying,
I'm going to send my boys. So tell me where this program is. I've got 2 boys upstairs. Take them.
You're just trying to get rid of them.
Take them with you, Yanni.
I'm staying here for the time being.
Send them to your people.
No. Do you miss Greece at the moment, now that you've been here?
No, not yet. I'm used to this kind of life. I've been away many years. I go back to Athens for every, in our system, every 8 years you have to go back for a couple of years at least. So there's a rotation. But I'm used to living abroad, and I like it, to be honest. You might say I'm a bit of a nomad or a posh nomad.
It's okay. That's a great life. I'm sure a lot of people are envious of what you're doing. So you did your military service in Cyprus, I believe.
Yes, according to the 1960 treaties, when Cyprus became independent, there is a Greek contingent. So we should not confuse that with the National Guard. The National Guard is the Cypriot army. There is a Greek contingent on the island since 1960. It's called Eldik, Ελληνική Δύναμη Κύπρου, so Hellenic Force of Cyprus. I got trained in Crete in the special, let's say, academy for cadet officers, and then I was transferred there for 16 months.
Wow. Okay.
So in total, 23 months of national service at the time.
Wow.
And what's that like, being a Greek soldier in Cyprus? Did you get close to any action? Was there any scuffles going on that you can talk about?
There were times of tension, but we weren't, let's say, on the front line.
Okay.
Although Cyprus is the front line anyway, because the distances are very small. It's a good place to get a taste of real military life, because there's a lot of training, and it's considered as one of the, let's say, elite forces of the Greek military.
Oh wow!
So it was a good experience, and I think it helped me as well in my job afterwards.
That's what I was going to ask.
In terms of discipline, respecting hierarchy, managing people of very different backgrounds.
Really?
Yeah. As a graduate, there's this system that when you finish university, you have the option to go as let's say, a plain soldier. You can do your military service as a cadet officer, which means a second lieutenant, which means that you're a platoon leader. So you've got about 24 soldiers under your orders. That is an important exercise to be able to manage these people and to convince them to do things in terms of training. Yeah, and to have the legitimacy to do it, because you're not a permanent, in their eyes, you're one of them, but you are and you're not, because you're also a conscript, but you're an officer. So there's a very delicate balance there that you have to.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have many Greeks from the diaspora through the military service when you were there?
No, all of them were from mainland Greece,
Right.
Okay.
and the islands. But no, I didn't have anyone from the diaspora. No.
Well, this seems to be a question that comes up a lot in the diaspora and is spoken about with a lot of hearsay. What are the requirements for kids that are born in Australia from Greek parents?
Or the US or Canada?
Any part of the diaspora when it comes to mandatory national service.
As long as they're here, they're not obliged to serve. It changes if they want to go back. If they want to live in Greece, they have to serve.
Right.
They have to serve for 6 months. But as long as they're here and they make sure that they submit the documents that they have to in the consulates, they're legally exempted from military service.
So how long can you go to Greece without being conscripted into the army? So for someone outside of Greece, Greek diaspora.
30 days if you haven't settled your documents and you have to go for some reason. If you're legally abroad, though, 3 months.
Okay, so if we fly in, spend the summer in Greece, fly out before the 90 days, whatever it is, you're okay. Otherwise?
6 months, sorry, I said 3 months, 6 months.
6 months,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And does that include grandkids of people that were born in Greece?
Yeah, what if they're not technically Greek citizens, but they're the children of Greeks?
They are treated as Australians, as foreigners. They're not obliged to serve if they don't have Greek citizenship.
Okay, so that's the kicker. You got to have Greek citizenship.
Yeah.
Okay, and if
To
you
serve.
don't have it,
If you don't have Greek citizenship, you're treated as a foreigner. So there's
even
no
though
obligation.
Your name's a Greek
No,
surname. Okay.
No, regardless.
Perfect.
Yeah.
See, that's where the hearsay is.
Yeah.
Because you get a lot of people in the community saying, no, they can still get you.
Yeah.
No, they can't. Yeah, I think there's a misconception there, a misunderstanding. You won't get arrested or anything like that. Just make sure that you're up to date. You're up to date, with your documentation.
Or stay less than 6 months.
And you're abroad. If you can prove that you're abroad since a child, you fall under the category of being μόνιμος κάτοικος εξωτερικού, which is a permanent Greek resident of abroad.
Well, on that point, hypothetically, if a Greek has a child here with the view to living in Australia or in the US or Canada permanently, should they also be applying for Greek citizenship for that child back in Greece? Or should that be an automatic thing?
If they are Greek or not?
Well, as in the parents are Greek,
Yeah.
or one of the parents are Greek, should they be automatically applying for
By
Greek
birth, they're
citizenship?
Greek citizens,
By both, okay.
but the Greek state must know that they exist.
That's where they say να το
Yeah,
δηλώσεις.
exactly.
Right.
You have to register your child. First of all, you've got to register your marriage, something which many people neglect.
Yep.
And then once you have children, you have to register your children's birth.
Right.
So with a birth certificate.
Sure.
A few questions.
And then they're Greek by law.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you get married in a Greek Orthodox church here in Australia,
Yeah.
does that make you automatically
No.
recognize? It
No.
doesn't. Okay.
This is a mistake that many people make and which creates sometimes misunderstandings and disappointment,
Mm-hmm.
especially of older generations who are now, in their 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And they come to the consulate and complain that, when they got married in a church, they thought everything was fine. And then they realized, years later that their children didn't have, or that, their children didn't get the Greek citizenship. It's two different things. When you get married, you need to register your marriage in the Greek, authorities.
Okay. So when you get married in an Orthodox church, you get your certificate.
Yeah.
Do you do that online, or do you have to go into a consulate?
You need the birth certificate, the Australian marriage certificate.
Mm-hmm.
With the Australian marriage certificate, you come to the consulate.
Because
So regardless of where you got married.
okay. Because I'm
And this
pretty
is with
sure,
the apostille as well?
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
because we get something from the Greek Orthodox Church when you get married.
Yeah.
Isn't that your Greek Orthodox certificate?
Yes, but
So you don't need that.
you use that to get your marriage certificate from the Australian authorities.
Oh, I get
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Because the Australian authorities want to also make sure that you
Okay.
got married.
Got it. So you got your Greek wedding certificate, get your Australian one. From that, you go to the consulate.
Yeah.
Then you're registered in Greece as married.
Yeah.
So
And
that
once
means-
you do that, you can also register your children.
Okay. At the same
And they
time.
don't know. It's not simultaneous.
Okay.
You don't decide 60 years later that, I want to do everything in one go.
Mm-hmm.
It is a process.
Yeah, right.
It's much quicker than it used to be
Mm.
because now we have online systems.
Oh, so you can do it online now.
The Greek consulate can do it online.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
A citizen cannot do it on his own, but the Greek
Yeah.
consulate doesn't. In the past, till a year ago, you had to send it to the special registry in Athens through the diplomatic pouch, which took time.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
Now it's much easier. You do it online,
Perfect.
and it's a significant reform of
Well, that's one of the things.
of governance.
That's been one of the kickers. Even getting like a passport or something like that has traditionally taken a fair amount of time. Has digitization helped a lot of that or improved it significantly over the last few years?
Yes, Greek passports are issued by the Greek police, not by the consulate. Again, that changed about, I think, 15 years ago. I was in the beginning of my career.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, it was easy. It was easy to go to a consulate and you would get a handwritten passport. But for obvious reasons of, security, exactly.
Imagine
they
that.
changed the process.
Okay.
And now it's strictly under the competence of the Greek police. So you apply here and the consulate sends your application to the Greek police in Athens.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the passport is issued. Then it's
Wow.
sent back here
Mm-hmm.
and you get it. The whole process would take about 2 months.
Okay.
Wow.
Safe to say 2 months, yeah.
Before I forget, had another question. Sorry, about the military service. When is the cut-off age?
You want to go, do you?
Or I'm just more for me actually. How old do you have to be?
32 and 45 are the two critical ages. Above 32, you
Mhm.
can start paying for
Okay.
for the time that you didn't serve.
Yep.
And at 45, you're acquitted. You're finished.
Beautiful. I don't know why I'm cheering, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You might have had fun, mate.
Yeah, but it sounds like it's a good thing though. I heard a lot of positive stories about people who do the military service.
Yeah, and in my case, I'm a strong supporter of military service. I think it helped me a lot in my life.
So for the Greek diaspora, is it 6 months? How long do they have to go for?
Yeah, 6 months. If they go back to serve, it is 6 months.
And does that include basic training for 6 weeks?
In my days, it was 40 days. Now I think it's 25.
Okay.
I think it's about 20-25 days.
That's we went
basic training, they call it.
Okay.
And then you get you get sent to, usually to the border or some island.
All right. So back on the process that we just talked about. So I'm married, go to the consulate, Australian passport. I'm registered in Greece. I have kids. I go back. I can register my kids now as Greek citizens. So when you register them as Greek citizens, is that the 2-month process now of getting them a passport? Is that what you said?
Yes, but we should not again conflate the two processes.
Okay.
One is getting your citizenship, which might take years to do.
Yeah.
Whereas getting your passport is once you have the citizenship, and that's 2 months.
Okay.
The problem arises especially when grandparents were not diligent and did not settle these issues. And
so that you mean by not registering their
children and then
their children.
And the grandchildren.
Okay.
And when the chain breaks, in other words, when the generation that first arrived here passes away, then it's much more difficult for the descendants of this man or woman to get the citizenship, because you have to then prove that your grandparents or your ancestors were Greek. And sometimes it's not easy to prove that, because many of them, for example, left from Greece when their place of origin was not even part of the Greek state. Castellorizo is a typical example. Castellorizo united with Greece in 1947.
Right.
Oh, wow.
So a migrant who left in the 20s from Castellorizo, or 30s under Italian rule, probably doesn't have any records of that. And once he or she passes away, the children decide in their 40s or 50s or 60s to start the process. It's not easy. So I would encourage people, to do it especially when their children are born, to register. Because there's a huge backlog with people who decide 30 or 40 years later to do the process. And then we've got a huge queue and complaints about delays.
And I guess that would also impact things like, particularly for people in the diaspora, things like inheritances and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, many complications arise. So especially, your generation who are still in the process of having their own children, once your children are born, in the first few months, come to the consulate and register the birth, especially if you're settled, if you've got Greek citizenship.
Sure.
I think I'm good.
You're good?
So I've registered both my boys.
Okay.
But they don't have a passport. It doesn't matter.
They're Greek.
But that's if they need it. So what's the benefit of having a Greek passport?
It is if you want to study in the European Union, if you want to, move around the EU, you have a Schengen passport. So, why not?
Yeah, okay. So I ended up
you can also argue that, since they're Greek, why not?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I've got a Greek passport, and I think I've renewed it twice. I've never used it.
There are going to be a lot of people listening to this who maybe don't have their Greek citizenship. For those who do go ahead and actually do it, we've heard stories about the current tax implications now, for example, of having, citizenship and income in one country or maybe in both countries. Where does that currently stand in terms of having citizenship in both of those countries? Are you being taxed twice?
Yeah, there is right now, since last year, there's an ongoing negotiation between the two countries to agree on avoidance of double taxation agreement. Right. Yeah, so that's a negotiation, and that will help to resolve issues such as that one. But you might not even be Greek and have that issue.
Right.
Because if you've got interests in Greece, financial interests, and you've got a tax authority number, you might not necessarily be Greek. So it doesn't go hand in hand with citizenship.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's an interesting distinction.
Yeah. I've got another question now. So as you mentioned earlier, a lot of the Greek diaspora's parents or grandparents are born in Greece. And a lot of them have land there as well. How does that work with registering property and land in Greece now? And what are the complications around that? So I understand if you're not a Greek citizen, automatically the state doesn't recognise you. So what happens in that case?
It recognizes you, but first of all, the Greek consulate acts also as a notary. So in other words, when a Greek citizen or an Australian citizen wants to resolve these issues, they come to the consulate and they write a power of attorney to a lawyer in Greece who deals with these issues and makes sure that they're represented according to Greek law in the Greek courts.
So that's what's called a plirexusio.
Plirexusio, power of attorney. Yeah.
You impressed with that one?
I'm very impressed.
Yeah, very impressed.
That's very good.
Double Ouzo to you then.
That's
it. Okay.
I've done all this before.
That's right. Somebody new to this. Yeah. Okay. So my parents have got a block of land. It's not worth anything, but I'm not sure if it's registered under me or my brother or my sister's name. So that's something I could go to the proxenio and
you will have to first of all find a lawyer in Greece and send him all the documents, the proof that property belongs to you.
Okay.
And then they are the ones who write, the first draft, and then they send it to the consulate, and it's stamped and agreed upon here.
Okay. We've got a curveball for you now. We're from Ipiro, in the mountains of Ipiro, Swili, and we've got land there, but there's no documentation. It's all word of mouth. Who owns that? That's Vangeli, that's Christos, that's Nicholas.
Είναι από αυτό το δέντρο μέχρι εκεί.
Yeah. How do you do with that? Or do you need like a surveyor?
I will answer very candidly that the Greek consulate cannot really help you in that case.
Nick, forget it, mate.
Okay.
It's better to take the plane and go there.
Okay, so if there's nothing written to say that you own it, if it's just
he's the Consul General, he's not God, mate. Come on.
I was going to ask a question. Okay, all right. So that's challenging. So you got to have documentation.
Yes,
and it doesn't matter what the villagers say. It's okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think that's the case everywhere here as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, just on that, so what are the most popular requests or questions that you guys get usually, or that you can help with?
Citizenship issues are probably the most popular. So acquiring Greek citizenship, and then applications for passports. Those two would be the highest on the list.
Sure.
Military service issues, a bit on tax issues. The Greek state has implemented a new reform according to which you can update your personal information with regard to your tax, let's say, identity. Yeah, so through the consulate, give information, your phone number and your address and your email, so that you're not obliged to have a Greek phone. So with an Australian phone, a mobile phone, you can identify and do all the work you need with the Greek tax authority without having to travel to Greece to do it. And that's important. We've had a few people coming already and resolving that. It takes 5 minutes. It's a very easy process.
That's an interesting one, because
you update your information basically.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well, even dealing with Greek banks at the moment, like I've got an uncle who
it's related to that.
Yeah, so he needed to have a Greek phone number in order to be able to do business.
That's no longer the case.
Fantastic.
You can have an Australian number, but you have to come and register it with us. It's an online process. There's an application, and you do it. We do it for you, but it's not even 5 minutes. It's very easy.
We've learned something fantastic.
Yeah,
you need to bring your cell phone with you and
all your documentation
and a passport or an ID to prove that it is you.
Yeah,
that's it.
Makes
that's
sense.
it.
Fantastic. Do you work closely with the church?
Yes, that's another very important part of the Greek culture and identity. The fact that, especially abroad, the church acts as a pole of, let's say, attraction to maintain the culture. It's very important for maintaining our heritage
Mm-hmm.
to also have that link.
Mm.
Of course, there are people who might feel that they're more secular and they want fewer contacts with the church. But overall, I've noticed that it's a very popular institution here in Australia, and it has played a very significant role in maintaining our culture.
Mm. And how do you work with the church? Do you talk to the Archbishop, and how do you interact together?
Close cooperation with Archbishop and the Archdiocese is a given, it's something very important and necessary for the job here. And in many functions, we are together.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We have common interests.
Yep.
Yeah.
In your capacity, in your role now, are you in a position now to be able to say, well, we want to be doing things like hosting events, doing community engagement, as opposed to, let's say, helping other groups do that sort of thing? Is that something that might be on the cards for the Consulate General here in Sydney?
Yes, some things you can do jointly with others. Other things it's better to do them on your own. I think I will try to do, commensurate with my budget. I will try to do both at the same time. So cultural events and some outreach to other communities as well, and also to the Australians, to the Australian public. It's not all about the Greek community. It's mostly the Greek community, but there's also a part of the job which pertains to promoting and enhancing relations with the host country, with Australia, and building bridges between the two. And that gives me the opportunity to go to an issue that I feel very strongly about, and that is the Anzac connection.
Yeah, right.
There's so much we can do there. It is highly commendable that a few Greeks here, Greek Australians, have managed to raise awareness on these issues in the past 2 decades. Of course, I'm referring to the Battle of Crete, but also to the Limnos story.
Yes.
Which was relatively unknown 20 years ago. That Limnos in 1915 was basically the logistics hub of the Australian Anzac campaign in Gallipoli.
Yeah.
There were cemeteries afterwards, hospitals, and very few people knew about it. So I have the impression that there are many stories still to be told of Australians fighting in Greece alongside Greek forces. Even after the Battle of Crete, there are stories of Australians staying on and New Zealanders till 1945. Not many. The bulk of the Australian forces returned to Australia to fight the then invading Japanese forces in the Pacific in 1942. But there were some forces which stayed back. Some of them fought under British orders, but they were there. So, we have to bring these stories to the surface.
Well, that's one of the things that we did. We dedicated an entire episode to the Anzac connection with Greece in World War II. And we went for nearly 3 hours. There are just so many stories that are yet to be told, that are just, they're living in people's family diaries, and
That's right.
they're only just starting to come out.
We just touched the surface, didn't we? We said we need to do another episode.
We will do another one this season, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah, one day I was surfing on the internet, and I came across this guy, this Australian officer of the Navy, who reached the rank of Rear Admiral. His name was Robertson, and apparently he was on HMS Kimberley, which was a British vessel, British ship, which was in the Dodecanesa, the Dodecanese, in 1944-45, and aboard that ship, the Germans capitulated and agreed to end the hostilities in the Dodecanesa.
Wow.
So, a story like that. Yes, it was a British vessel, but there were Australians on board.
Yeah, wow.
And many other stories of Greeks and New Zealanders or Australians fighting together in El Alamein in late 1942 in the Middle East. So that's another dimension that we should all try to, do some work on and research.
Well, I think I'm sensing that we need to invite you back for this year's World War II episode, because there's so many stories that are going to be coming out again. And again, I mean, we need a bell every time we mention Nick Andriatakis on this show, because
I was waiting for you to mention him, Yanni. I was waiting. We're going to say bingo because he gets a mention in every episode.
For some reason, he's always there.
He's very popular, I think.
He is.
And he's done a lot for the Greek community here, and I think he deserves our praise.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Definitely. You might have to be a returning guest then. You and Nick.
Pleasure.
Hey? Dynamic duo.
Yeah, for sure. We won't go for 3 hours, though, I promise.
Classic.
Dear.
I was going to touch on, so have you met Mitsotakis at all?
Have I? Sorry, met him.
Yeah, have you spoken to him? Do you do much with him at all at that level, or is that more the consular level? The guys in Canberra?
When I served in Nicosia, I met him a few times, but I'm not exactly the most senior official to be talking to the Prime Minister. So, yeah, I've met him, but
Okay, so you don't have much dealings with him in your role now?
I have dealings with his office, but not with him.
Okay, all right.
No.
We are going to try and get him on the show one day.
That's why he's asking. He's saying, just give him a call. Get him on the show.
No.
How difficult is it dealing with that sort of hierarchy? You mentioned, obviously, before, being in the military helped with defining how you deal with that sort of thing.
Yeah, the foreign ministry is a bit is similar to the military in that sense. There is hierarchy, and the more you climb up the ladder, the more easy it is to have access to, the political class of the country, because by definition it's a job which is very close to the political, let's say, establishment of the country. Having said that, though, it is two different worlds, because we don't serve political parties, we serve the Greek state, regardless of who's in power. We are career diplomats, we're not politicians.
Well, for all intents and purposes, there's no party affiliation in your roles.
No, that is a personal issue which I keep to myself.
Sure.
And when I go every 4 years and vote, but it's not something that is of any interest or concern, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah, exactly.
To anyone. Otherwise, you miss the point and you lose the purpose of the job. It's serving your country, regardless of who's in power.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the vote, because that's obviously been something that Greeks here have been speaking about for a long time. What is the current status with being able to vote in Greek elections? Can Greeks of the diaspora now vote?
So, in December 2019, a law was passed for the first time for Greeks abroad to be able to exercise their right to vote. There are two criteria to render you eligible to vote. One is to have submitted a tax declaration in the past 2 years, and the second criterion is to have lived in Greece for at least 2 years in the last 35 years, which by definition excludes most Greek Australians. But sometimes we should see the glass half full rather than half empty, because it is a first step, and it is an important development. And I would encourage those who are eligible to vote, and there are a few, especially Greek migrants who arrived here in the past decade or so, to register and do it, through the consulate. You can do it online, but if you've got difficulties, you can come to the consulate for help as well. It's not very difficult as a process. And, be ready to vote, because in 2023, according to the Constitution, we will have elections.
How decisive and how powerful can the diaspora vote be for a Greek election? By some counts, there are more Greeks outside of Greece living abroad than there are within Greece. Obviously, not all those would be citizens, but or can vote. So obviously, there's going to be a smaller percentage there. But how powerful do you think that vote could be?
I think they would give a fresh perspective, and from their point of view on how they see the world, and it would definitely help to get them involved in the political process. And that's the rationale behind the December 2019 legislation, to get them involved in the politics of their country of origin.
is there a school of thought within Greece that says these guys don't live here? Why should they be influencing the way things are happening? I'm sure
I would not limit it only to Greece. This discussion is omnipresent in all countries of the world who have large diasporas. There are arguments both for and against this.
So is it a common theme now amongst other countries with their diaspora?
there are other countries which have the same discussion. Yeah.
So how many Greeks are there in New South Wales that you know of? Is there
According to the 2021 census, there are 142,000 who basically declared themselves as being of Greek origin. It does not mean that the number is exactly that one. It might be much larger, because there are some people which did not state that they are of Greek origin.
Okay, so this is in the census that we get in Australia.
Yeah,
as long as you tick your Greek heritage of some sort.
But there was some controversy about that last census in that it didn't actually provide for a specific, I can't remember the specific
religion, Greek Orthodox.
They had a lot of other ethnicities, but didn't actually put Greek, I think, as an option. But they did ask for language.
I think they had other. And you had
maybe
to write it in.
something along those lines. But there was some controversy about that. So I suspect that it may be even higher than what it was.
Yes, most people here argue, and there are people better placed than I am to give you an exact answer, I think, who know the realities of the community better than I do. They argue that the number is much higher. And I tend to agree that it is probably higher than 142,000.
But it then comes back to that question, what is a Greek? Does it come down to the language? Does it come down to your citizenship?
Exactly.
What is it at the end of the day?
And who do you include when you count? Do you include someone who's got a grandfather of Greek origin but who has no connection with the country anymore? Is he included as a Greek Australian or not? It is a bit difficult.
Yeah.
How do you define that? And practically speaking as well, who do you include in the count?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Very interesting.
And what about the whole of Australia? Do you know the stats out of that? I'm sure Melbourne would.
According to that same census, we're a bit under 500,000. So 400, and if I'm not mistaken, it was about 480,000, something like that.
Okay.
The number is probably larger, probably higher than that.
Very interesting. Now, look, another thing that obviously you guys are very interested in, have been active in, is the issue of trade between Greece and Australia. We've actually had some discussions with your office previously around things like protected designations of origin for things like feta, certain wines and all that sort of thing. Where does trade lie in terms of importance for your office and for Greek relations with Australia now?
This issue falls under the purview of the embassy, but it is also part of the office of the Trade Commissioner, who's based in Sydney. So increasing trade is a high priority of the Greek government, because two-way merchandise, I think, amounted to around 250 million euros, which is not such an impressive figure. So there is potential to do much more there. Most of this trade the balance of trade is in favor of Greece, so much more.
Right.
We export much more to Australia than the Australians export to Greece.
Right.
Now, attracting Australian investments is obviously a high priority for the Greek government. There is a very important investment which is ongoing in Greece right now, an Australian investment, Macquarie Infrastructure and Real Assets Group. I think they're called MIRA. They invested 2.1 billion euros in the Hellenic electricity distribution network operators. So that was one of the largest investments ever in Greece, foreign investments.
Wow.
So FDI, foreign direct investments. And there are smaller investments in the field of tourism. And then there are some investments of Greek companies here.
Yeah, right.
The Mytilineos Group, in solar energy, for example.
Okay.
And then you mentioned the issue of geographic indicators. That is a sensitive issue in our trade relations with Australia, because Australia is a third country, so it's outside the EU, and it's not bound by the strict rules of the EU. So we've got on these issues. So there's the level of protection is not the same on products such as ouzo, feta cheese,
Tivoli feta in front of you.
Kalamata olives. And so, that is an issue because we've got imitation products in the Australian market, which is to the detriment of the promotion of Greek exports.
Yes.
And that is an issue being dealt with at the level of the EU-Australia negotiation for a free trade agreement.
Right.
Yeah, so these issues are raised at that framework, and other countries raise similar issues.
Okay, so do you raise your issues with the EU, who come back and discuss it with Australia? Or
exactly,
do you
because the European Commission has the lead on the negotiation with the Australians. So we all, agree on a common position, and then the Commission represents us in these talks with the Australians.
Do you have a list of products that you're discussing at the moment with the EU into Australia? Did we mention feta or something like that?
Feta is one of the issues, which is top priority for us. Yeah, Kalamata olives, Tipuro Ouzo. Yeah, we mentioned all that before.
Okay, but would you have many other type of olives out there that would call themselves Kalamata olives, but they're not? Is that a common thing?
That has to do with the legislation of each country. As I said, in the EU, rules are much stricter to protect geographic indicators.
And really what we're talking about here when it comes to putting these geographic indicators on it, it really does come down to it being a question of quality, isn't it? Because increasingly we've seen over the years in Australia, Greek Australians in particular don't want the imitation product anymore. They can see the difference. I guess, is that the message? These products, if you're buying Greek, if you're buying feta, you're buying Greek olive oil, you're buying ouzo, you're far better off buying the original product, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. The standards are higher when you do it, when you produce a product according to the, original standards of the product.
Because they do have quite rigid regulations for what constitutes this is feta, this is,
It has to do with how you produce it. The consistency is of the product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is this the role of the Trade Commissioner that's coming out? Or
Yes.
it's already here?
Yeah, the Trade Commissioner, in cooperation with the embassy in Canberra, are, let's say, the competent authorities to deal with these issues. But I also get involved.
And will they be based in Sydney or?
Yes, the Trade Commissioner is based in Sydney, and the logic there being that Sydney is the business centre of the country.
Yeah.
So it makes more sense for the Trade Commissioner to be based here than in Canberra.
Sure.
Yeah, makes sense. What did you say?
The message, I guess, is really buy Greek. I mean, for crying out loud, we make feta. Greece makes feta, makes amazing olive oil, makes amazing ouzo. Buy the products. There's no point in buying something that's an imitation. If we're proud about it, we may as well put our money where our mouth is and actually spend the money on it, right?
Definitely. No, I hear you. Look, there could be another episode coming on there, Tom, I think.
Absolutely.
Definitely. So we talked about the consulate. What else does it do? So we talked about the trade minister. And is there another area of the Greek consulate that you want to talk about?
Yeah. We said, trade is under the Trade Commissioner, but then there's also a public diplomacy section, which consists of two permanent staff from Greece who are in charge of public diplomacy and promoting, let's say, the Greek trademark abroad and in Australia. In a broader sense, I don't mean, in terms of just trade. I mean the Greek trademark, Greek culture, Greek tourism, the image of Greece in Australia. That is their main priority. And of course, to cover the Greek press here, the press of the Greek community, and report back to Greece, and to cover the Australian press and what what the impressions are here of what the image is of Greece. Their role is very important in terms of public relations as well, and promoting Greek culture, the organized functions and lectures and things like that, to promote.
Because we do have a lot of Greek media here, Greek Australian media, a lot of newspapers and online. Do you will this person meet with them, and will you have discussions with them?
We work very closely with the team there, and we meet the Greek press, and we've got contacts, and that's why we have very regular meetings with journalists.
I was just going to say, in terms of the branding of Greece, and in terms of the management of that image, are you pleased with the way that thing's going? I mean, we've seen some amazing tourism campaigns over the last few years. I mean, the campaign for Crete, for example, with the oranges and all that sort of thing. Just amazing storytelling. Are you pleased with the way that Greece is now marketing itself internationally?
Yeah, I think it has become a very popular tourist destination, and the numbers speak for themselves when you see the statistics, especially before the COVID pandemic. In 2019, we had, I think, more than 30 million tourists.
Which is a record, isn't it?
I think 2019 was the best year in terms of tourism. Yeah, or one of the best years. Might be mistaken, but it was a very good year. So that is very important. And in the past 5 or 6 years, you've also seen a change when it comes to Greek films and filmmaking in Greece. Sorry, not Greek films, filmmaking in Greece. Foreign productions, which choose Greece as the set of the film. Yeah, so they film in situ, in the Greek islands, in Athens. And that's a good way to, indirectly promote Greek tourism. And
for sure.
Yeah,
definitely. Would there be any sort of unique campaign you can think of getting Australians to Greece? And more importantly, how does Australia compare as in numbers? Are we like a big market for Greeks in Greece, Australia, compared to the rest of the world? Or?
Yes, it is, and that's why you probably heard this, you followed it in the Greek press here, that the National Tourist Organization is opening an office in Melbourne, exactly because the Australian market offers many opportunities for Greek tourism. And I think the Anzac connection is, again, we're going back to Nick Andriotakis' best issue. We want to... but the Anzac connection is very important in that sense as well, to build the bridge between the two countries. That they have many things in common, that they fought together in 2 world wars, that Greek migrants contributed to what Australia is today by enriching Australian culture and contributing into this multicultural miracle that has happened here.
Definitely.
So it's a two-way street, I think. Both countries benefited from that. And what I tell the seniors, let's say, of the Greek community is that they are my heroes, because when they arrived here, things were not as easy as they might be today for our generation. They had to work very hard, and they managed to do so well and excel, and they integrated without being assimilated.
Yes.
So, and that's a very important achievement, and something that they should take pride in.
Great
that
point.
They're not a ghetto, but they haven't lost their heritage.
Great point.
That's a fantastic point.
So,
you summed up perfect.
That is, I think, something we should praise them for.
100%. Well, look, I mean, again, we say this at the end of every episode, but,
So I've got one last question. Can you get Aegean Airlines over here or not? Can you talk to them?
We both used to work in aviation.
We need more flights back to Greece.
Yes. I'm not sure what their fleet is. Then you should convince them also to buy bigger planes, maybe.
A321 can't get here.
Yeah.
Well, they can get an A330.
I think it's an 18-hour flight. And,
direct. They probably need a 787 to get here direct.
I think we've got a better chance of going to our old bosses and saying we need to do seasonal flights to Greece.
But how good would it be? I was going to say Olympic Airlines, but they used to fly out here. But how good would it be to see Eugene to come out here?
Yeah.
I think they do well.
I think they would as well. People would choose them. They would.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway. Well, look, I mean, we've covered a lot of ground, and there's still so much that we can cover, but we need to let you go at some point tonight. So
thank you for this very, first interesting discussion. I think we'll have the opportunity to have more of these discussions, and
we hope so.
I'm open to having this because I like the format, the fact that it is informal. Thanks for the food and the water. I want to stress that I didn't drink any ouzo today.
No, he's very well behaved. Very well behaved.
He was. No, you've done well, Yanni. Awesome. Now, look, it was a pleasure having you here. And
absolutely.
Look, the information you've given us, I thought the Greek diaspora would love to hear firsthand, which is what you've said. So I can't wait to have you on again. And perhaps we could do another World War II episode and bring Yanni along.
Absolutely.
Like you know a lot about that.
If you're interested.
Topic.
Yeah.
Well, look, it was an absolute honour to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All the very best for the mission here. If we can be of any assistance, we obviously will be. Please reach out to us. We're always here to support.
All the best to you and your families, and all the best to Hellenism abroad.
That's it.
Very well said.
Thank you, Yanni.
Well, Nick.
Tom, how good was that? We're back.
We are back, and what a way to kick off.
That's it. Oh, it was awesome. Great discussion. Learned a lot out of that. So you better get your son registered, mate. That's
absolutely.
What I'm thinking.
Oh, he is. He's already done.
Oh, yep. Fantastic.
He's done, mate. ouzotalk@outlook.com is the email. Follow us on most social media platforms at Ouzo Talk or on Instagram at Ouzo_talk.
Well done.
Nick Athanasiou, thank you very much, mate.
Tom, I'm still impressed you can still say that after every episode. It's awesome.
I'm learning.
You are. You've done well. Tom, it's been a pleasure. Awesome. And let's do it again very soon.
Let's get ready for a big season.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
See ya.
Ακολουθήστε μας στο Soundees, στο Spotify, στο Apple Podcasts και στο Google Podcasts.